G'day guys, it's Rob from Troutlore.com.au back again with another fly tying video. Today it's a customer request. We're tying the Tom Jones fly. It's a classic Australian smelter pattern. Fantastic for fishing the Western Lakes in Victoria and other areas of the country as well. For those of you lucky enough to have a copy of Peter Coulson's fly tying book from a number of years ago, you'll know there's probably 10 different variations of this fly in that book. This is not one of them. This is my variation. They're all slightly different. They all work. So let's get started. We'll come in with our hook into the vice jaws to begin with. This is an Ahrex FW580 wet fly hook in size 6. You can tie this down to a size 14 if you like. They all work. Now this pattern calls for a red hotspot at the tail, which usually uses a red floss. Except I can't find mine today, so I'm going to mix this up. I'm going to start with UTC 140 Denier thread in red, and we'll change threads halfway through to the black that we use for the head. This will just get us that hot spot in the tail. Tie that thread in, and just before the hook bend, we just start building up a little bit of a clump there. Like so, and now it's time to tie the tail in. The tail for this one we use possum tail, and take our tail and part it in the center for these nice long straight fibers, and we just find a little clump that tends to want to stay together. Trim that out, and then you can see we have nice straight fibers there. We're just going to pick out those few that are a bit long and preen out the underfur. We don't want that bulking up. Then we'll take about a hook shank in length, transfer to our other hand, tie that in, and then start advancing the thread up the hook shank to the head, covering that material the whole way. Then we'll come back down, and we're going to run one thread wrap underneath just to support that, and a second one just to bring that tail up. And then we can further build that little red hot spot at the back. Obviously, if we were using floss, this would only be a couple of wraps needed. That's not going to happen today, so we just need to build it up a little bit further with the thread, making sure that we don't pinch that tail down and send it pointing downwards. Then we're going to tie in the rib for this fly, which is tied with Uni French Tinsel in a medium. I've tried it with the small, I've tried it with the large. They both really don't balance out well with the other materials. The medium is the way to go for this one. I'm just going to secure that up the length of the hook shank, then pop in a half hitch to secure it, and a quick 2 or 3 turn whip finish, and trim that off, and that's it for our red thread. Now we're going to bring in some Veevus 8/0 in black and start that off on our thread and bring it back down the length, trimming off the excess and tying it right down to the edge of that little red thread bubble, and then bring forward a couple of wraps. Now for the body, you can use a chenille for this. I've seen that done before. Mostly it's a dubbed body though, so that's what I prefer. We're going to come in with some dubbing wax on the thread, and we're going to use from the Lost Fly in Tasmania a dubbing that Brent put together for me down there. It's the Troutlore Olive Blend. This is a lovely soft dubbing blend that was designed for tying nymphs specifically, but works very well for these sorts of patterns and for dries as well. So we want to start by building a nice fine dubbing noodle. There is the tendency with these larger hooks to think you need to put more dubbing on the thread to get the coverage, but it ends up clumping if you do that. So you're better off continuing with a fine dubbing noodle and just wrapping more. So I want to bring those wraps back to line up with where tinsel is tied in, and then start coming forward. We want to go a little over a third of the way between our red thread and the eye. And now we're going to tie in the first of our two wings. For this, we're using rabbit strips from Hairline in olive, which match up very nicely to that dubbing that we have. So the rabbit strips, you'll see the hair naturally preens back one way on the pelt. So you want to take the end where it comes off like that, as you would with the zonker, and then, given that this is a 3mm wide strip, we want to cut approximately 3mm of it, so it's like a little square, and that leaves us with a little piece like so. Now for that, that is too long to tie in where it needs to be. If you place that at the front of the hook, you'll see it gets us about the length we want. So we actually want to trim that off at that tie-in point. And then with our thumb and forefinger on the bobbin together, push the forefinger forwards to spin that thread. That will get the thread twisted so it wants to loop back when the pressure's taken off. Then placing our rabbit strip on top, that thread will jump back onto the rabbit strip and allow us to pull down and bind it into place. So there's our first wing tied in. Now we're going to come back with our dubbing wax and some more dubbing, and continue bringing this dubbing right up the hook shank towards the head of the fly. So again, keep that dubbing noodle nice and thin. If there's not enough, we can always apply more. Just make sure that it doesn't twist that wing around the body. And we'll extend that dubbing noodle. Just keeping it nice and evenly wrapped as we work up the hook shank, getting towards the eye. Now at this stage, we're going to run in the ribbing, run once around the gold thread dam, and then we'll start wrapping forward underneath that wing to start with, then over it, and a couple more wraps to bring us to the front of the fly. And then once we're up here, capture that with our thread, wrapping in front of, behind, in front of. Then we can trim off the rest of that tinsel and secure it in place. Now for the second wing, we come back to our rabbit and we're going to cut out another square just like we did before. This time we want it to be longer so that they come back and almost end at the same length. So we're going to cut this one off right by the pelt, and then twisting our thread so it jumps back, we tie this in right at the point where our dubbing stopped, and then cover up all those errant fibres at the front and use our thread just to build a solid head to the fly. Once that's done, you can pop a little half hitch in there just to hold it in place. Then 4 or 5 turn whip finish and trim that thread out. So now we have our 2 wings that both sit back like so. When they're in the water, they'll actually sit quite flat as the fly is pulled through the water, and then when you stop, they'll puff out again, giving it some movement. Then the only thing left is just to build that head a little bit further. So we're going to come in with some head cement on our bodkin and build that head up. Just going to touch it on gently, turn it around, get some on the top there, a little bit more, just to build up a nice glossy head for that fly. And once that's dry, it's good to go. You can take your dubbing brush and brush out some of that dubbing underneath just to get a little extra movement if you like. It doesn't have to be brought out, it can be left nice and close. And that's it. Fished really well along flooded margins, along the weed beds when smelting fish are in looking for bait fish. This is a great little pattern that will catch fish time and time again. So give it a shot, see how you go. Winter is coming and we're all going to be hitting the lake soon, so now's the perfect time to tie one of these up. Once again, thanks for watching. If you like the video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button so that way we'll pop up in your feed. Hit the notification bell if you really want to know when new videos come out. And until next time, happy tying. Cheers.